Everyone loves a good underdog story, and pro wrestling's got plenty to talk about. Whether it's a one-off surprise victory on a weekly TV show or a huge championship win on pay-per-view, these moments can make new superstars overnight, or it can give an already established superstar their long-awaited time in the spotlight. Today I'm going to look at some underdog moments that happened in the past in an effort to brighten up your day. So let's begin with one of the best ones that ever happened in the WWF back at the beginning of 1999. Mick Foley had been wrestling since 1986, and throughout the decade that followed, he made quite a name for himself. His high threshold for pain and his ability to throw caution to the wind when it came to his own physical well-being made him a really compelling performer. But Mick wasn't someone who won heavyweight championships, and that's because at one point in time, Foley was never really seen as championship material. During the 90s, big wrestling companies wanted their champions to look and act a certain way. They had to have the right look in order to shift merchandise, and to be the face of a company, especially as a babyface, one would have to conform to a certain stereotype in regards to how they carried themselves. At the very beginning of 1999, however, Mick Foley broke the trend when he defeated The Rock on an episode of Raw, capturing the WWF Championship in the process while the crowd lost their minds. Mick was always very endearing. There was something about Foley that made you root for him, even though he was seen as a little out there and a bit crazy. Underneath Mick's tough exterior though, there was a well-spoken and kind human being that really got showcased during the later part of 97 and much of 1998. So fans really wanted to see Mick finally achieve something that was once unachievable, and he did it in front of a raucous crowd in Worcester, Mass. The fact that WCW gave away this result on their Nitro program was really the icing on the cake, seeing as this little plan totally backfired and everyone switched over to see Mick's crowning moment. And yes, while Stone Cold Steve Austin may have helped Foley out a little, it still doesn't take away from the fact that this was one of the greatest moments in Raw history. Michael Cole summed it up perfectly on commentary when he said,
"Mankind is achieved a dream, and the dream of everyone else who's been told you can't do it."
And yes, Foley may have been a main eventer, he may have headlined shows the previous year against Stone Cold Steve Austin, but he couldn't get the job done no matter how many times he tried. This moment right here is special because Foley finally did it. He became WWF Champion. By the time 2016 came around, I don't think anyone imagined Zack Ryder winning another singles championship in WWE ever again. Zack, who now goes by his real name Matt Cardona, is a great pro wrestler who went out of his way to make a name for himself back in 2011 and 2012 when the company seemingly had no plans to get behind him. And while this did raise his stock a little, he would be right back at square one in a matter of months, performing as a lower tier superstar despite having a lot of fan support. In 2016, Zack was put in a 7-man ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. The match featured some big names such as Kevin Owens, The Miz, Dolph Ziggler and Sami Zayn. Zack was the least likely to win this thing and he was seemingly there to make up the numbers, but to everyone's surprise, Zack was able to retrieve the Intercontinental belt and win the match against all odds. Ryder became IC champion and he also got a WrestleMania moment that he could now call his own. And this ladder match would turn out to be one of, if not the, best matches on the WrestleMania 32 card. After getting released from WWE, Matt Cardona would work on reinventing himself, and he's arguably better known now for his work on the indies in comparison to his time in WWE. But I really do think we'll see Matt again in the WWE in the very near future. I'm actually surprised he hasn't been brought back already after the things he achieved while working away from the company. While Sean Waltman had put on excellent matches during the early days of his pro career, in the WWF he was initially treated as an enhancement talent, someone who had come in to make the big boys look good for a few minutes. Scott Hall took a liking to Waltman, and when Vince McMahon laid out the creative plans for Sean to actually beat Scott on Monday Night Raw, the bad guy was all for it, and so the match began just as you'd expect. Just Razor Ramon beating the hell out of a young jobber, nothing out of the ordinary. Waltman then surprised Scott with a moonsault from the top rope followed by a cover, and when Scott got pinned in the middle of the ring, both Waltman and the fans in attendance went crazy. This typically didn't happen on televised WWF matches, and the fact that Razor sold it all with shock and anger was what really solidified the whole story. A guy like Sean Waltman doesn't beat a guy like Razor Ramon, but on this night, it happened. Waltman was dubbed the 1-2-3 Kid after getting this pinfall victory, and the match also turned Razor into a babyface, seeing his fellow heels Money Incorporated decided to make fun of Scott for losing what should have been an easy match. Kid says this match was what put him on the map, while his match against Bret Hart the following year was what made fans take him seriously, and Waltman would remain very good friends with Scott Hall until the bad guy passed away. It all began right here on the 17th of May 1993. It's actually incredible how one win like this can change someone's career forever, and this is something Scott also took note of. Hall would continue to let lesser challengers beat him as time went on, with two notable occurrences happening in WCW. Chris Jericho and Hector Garza were able to beat Scott live on Nitro when they too were viewed as underdogs. In the WWF, Barry Horowitz was seen as a premium jobber. He was used frequently at house shows where he had to look up at the lights on a pretty consistent basis. When he showed up for TV tapings, he'd also job out while making his opponents look as good as possible. Still, Barry was capable of having competitive matches too, as evidenced by his match against Jeff Jarrett on the March 13th, 1995 episode of Raw, a match where the Intercontinental Championship was on the line. It seemed like Barry was destined to lose every time he appeared on WWF television, but on the July 9th, 1995 Wrestling Challenge show, Barry defeated Body Donna Skip. After he got the pinfall win, Jim Ross went nuts on commentary, shouting "Horowitz beat him, can you believe it?" into his microphone as Barry jumped for joy. Sunny was also in disbelief. She demanded that Barry came back and the match got restarted, but Barry headed to the back to celebrate his big moment in the dressing room. Skip would then say Barry couldn't last 10 minutes with him in the ring if the two were to have a rematch. Barry did manage to survive 10 minutes without getting pinned. And then, at SummerSlam 95, Barry once again defeated Skip, which gave Mr. Horowitz his first ever win on pay-per-view. Perhaps Barry could be seen as the real ultimate underdog. He was always viewed as an enhancement guy through and through, and the WWF didn't try to change that fact as he began his little push. But in early 1996, Barry would return to his old jobbing ways, and even when he joined WCW in 1997, he continued to lose matches. Still, when many people think of underdogs finally getting their big moment, many people will think of Barry Horowitz defeating Skip. What makes the Miz's story so unique is that yes, while he was the underdog when he faced John Cena at WrestleMania 27, he was also a heel. It's rare for the villain to get presented as the one who doesn't have much of a chance, but that's exactly what the Miz was. Miz wasn't really liked all that much by fans. He's also made it clear that the guys in the locker room didn't think much of him either, and also he wasn't what I'd consider a Vince McMahon guy. Superstars verbally bashed Miz on TV and in interviews, including CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, yet he hung in there and he made quite the statement by beating Cena at WrestleMania 27 while successfully defending his WWE Championship. Now yes, the match wasn't great, seeing as Miz got knocked out in the middle of the bout, and yes, he also got a lot of help from The Rock. As a matter of fact, Miz was playing second fiddle to the ongoing Rock and Cena rivalry that was beginning to heat up in the WWE, and it's quite remarkable that a Mania main event was also overshadowed by a different rivalry going on altogether. But still, Miz closing out Mania by successfully defending his championship against John Cena, of all people, isn't something that many folks envisioned. Miz is one of those bad guys you just love to hate, and when he gets going on the microphone, he can be incredibly entertaining to watch. He's also one of those guys though that just doesn't work for me when he's a babyface. It's very difficult these days for the guys and girls to come up with Royal Rumble moments because it seems like everything's already been done before. Way back in 2002, however, the WWE managed to genuinely shock fans when Tough Enough winner Maven eliminated company legend The Undertaker from the Royal Rumble match, and still to this day, it's something that many folks remember. I mean, think of all the eliminations that's happened in Royal Rumble matches over the years. For the few that stand out, they just have to be special, and this one was indeed special. Maven said he was terrified after eliminating the dead man. Taker told the youngster to dropkick him as hard as he could before the match, yet Maven was still concerned that he went a bit too hard. Still, The Undertaker said Maven did a great job when the two got back to the dressing room, and he also said that The Undertaker pretty much gave him his career. If it weren't for The Undertaker going over the top rope, Maven could have been lost in developmental for years, but this moment gave Maven his big break. The Undertaker completely wrecked young Maven after the elimination, but let's not ruin a good story. From 2002 to 2005, Triple H didn't take too many losses. You've heard it all before, the Reign of Terror. It's one of those things in pro wrestling history that I feel is a little overblown, just like the finger poke of doom, but it is true that Hunter didn't eat too many pinfalls. Not from main eventers, and especially not from mid-carders. Shelton Benjamin had proven himself to be a great performer while working alongside Charlie Haas in the world's greatest tag team, but when he got drafted to Raw, he'd need to prove himself all over again as a singles guy, and so he found himself in a main event match against Triple H on the March 29th, 2004 episode of Monday Night Raw. It looked like things were going to play out as they normally would. Ric Flair was giving Triple H a helping hand from the outside, and Benjamin had his hands full with both Triple H and the Nature Boy. But Chris Benoit would come out to take care of Rick, and this allowed Benjamin to pin Hunter in the middle of the ring. Not only did Shelton beat Triple H on this night, he defeated him again the following week via countout. So Shelton Benjamin was one of the few guys that actually had Triple H's number during this time period. The game just couldn't beat him. This would all lead to Shelton feuding with Hunter's Evolution teammates. He beat Ric Flair at Backlash 2004, though he failed to beat Randy Orton for the IC belt at Bad Blood. Now established as a babyface, Shelton was selected by fans to face Chris Jericho at Taboo Tuesday for the IC title. Shelton won the match, he got his first WWE Singles Championship, and I'd say things may have played out a little differently if he didn't get that first big win over Triple H back in March. They don't call him the ultimate underdog for nothing. Rey Mysterio hasn't necessarily been viewed as a lesser superstar due to his size, but when he's went up against the big boys of pro wrestling, the commentators have always made it clear that Rey's at a disadvantage. The old David versus Goliath adage has been thrown around a lot during Rey's matches, but it's easy to see why. I mean, the story just writes itself when Rey stands toe-to-toe with a competitor much bigger than he is. Rey achieved the impossible when he won the Royal Rumble in 2006, made even more remarkable seeing as he entered the match at the number 2 spot. Mysterio would then go on to win the World Championship by beating Kurt Angle and Randy Orton in a triple threat match at WrestleMania 22, and I can't imagine many fans who watched Mysterio in WCW wrestling as a cruiserweight would one day envision him winning the World Heavyweight belt in a WrestleMania match. As a matter of fact, people would have called you mental for making such a statement. It has to be mentioned too, there was some criticism from fans regarding Rey's monster push and championship win. Many believe that Rey was only given these opportunities due to Eddie Guerrero's passing, and it's a shame Rey's time in the spotlight has this asterisk beside it. But still, the ultimate underdog managed to win the ultimate prize, and I do still believe Rey deserved his own time in the main event picture. He's been a phenomenal performer throughout his entire career. At Armageddon 2008, Jeff Hardy was able to beat Edge and Triple H in a triple threat match to win the WWE Championship. Jeff's role in the company during this time period was a desirable one. He may not have won any world championships, but he was extremely popular with fans young and old, so it could be fair to say Jeff never really needed to become champion, seeing his fans would be happy to see him in practically any spot on the card. Still, hard work does deserve a reward, and seeing as Jeff was so popular, his crowning moment would be one that fans would remember for a long time. Hardy was up against some stiff competition here. We've already established how difficult it was to get a win over Triple H, but during this particular era, Edge was also hard to beat. But Jeff managed to overcome the odds in spectacular fashion, and the celebration after his victory was one to remember. I've admitted before to not being a huge Jeff Hardy fan, but I fully understand too that he was once one of the most popular wrestling stars on the whole planet. He's one of those guys who also retained his loyal fan base no matter where he went, so I can definitely appreciate how much this moment meant to both Jeff and his supporters. And even though I'm not a massive Jeff Hardy fan, this is a match I've watched quite a few times just to see the insane crowd reaction that happens to close out the show. Jeff's reaction to winning was also pretty awesome. At the first ever Clash of the Champions, Sting wrestled Ric Flair for the NWA Championship. Sting was very popular, but he was also very new to Jim Crockett Promotions, having only been with the company for less than a year before this main event took place. It was hard for fans to imagine Sting overcoming Ric Flair in March of 1988. By this point, Flair had already reached legendary status, and fans had witnessed Ric Flair taking care of newcomers who got too big for their boots time and time again. But this time, it was different. While Sting didn't beat Flair to become the new NWA champion, he did manage to bring Flair to his limit. The 45-minute time limit expired and judges couldn't decide a winner. So the match was announced as a draw, which really was the next best thing Sting could have hoped for. This alone isn't enough to tell the story. When you watch the match back, you can clearly see Flair going out of his way to make Sting look like $1 million. The Stinger may have been popular going into this one, but he truly was a made man when he left the Greensboro Coliseum on this night. And so the Underdog became a true main event player when Clash of the Champions 1 got wrapped up. It's a career-making match, one that I think every wrestling fan should see at least once. And if you haven't watched it yet, then that's your homework assignment for tonight.
Mamacita. Viva la raza.
I don't think people necessarily thought Eddie Guerrero couldn't win the WWE Championship, but the idea of him overcoming Brock Lesnar in a pay-per-view main event to capture that championship seemed a lot more unlikely. Eddie had his own personal problems that he had to take care of long before this match took place, and these personal problems were all laid out for people to see during a promo that took place on SmackDown before the No Way Out main event. This promo, for my money, is one of the greatest of all time, and I just can't pull this one up when I'm grabbing a few clips or a few screenshots. Every time it comes up on my screen, I have to watch it from start to end because it's just that good. Anyway, Brock Lesnar, as you all know, was and still is one mean son of a bitch, and Lesnar had conquered superstars who may have been viewed as a little more noteworthy than Eddie Guerrero. He beat The Rock, he beat The Undertaker. Just at WrestleMania the year prior, he defeated Kurt Angle. So Lesnar was viewed as a pretty big deal and a serious threat to anyone who stepped up to him. At No Way Out 2004, Eddie was able to overcome the odds and he defeated Lesnar in a very gripping match that still holds up extremely well to this very day. Guerrero may have gotten a little help from Bill Goldberg, but this doesn't take away from the moment at all. Eddie's post-match celebration is so fun to watch, and you can see the guy was legitimately delighted to win his first WWE Championship, and it's one of those moments you can put on if you ever need cheering up a little. Guerrero would prove to be a fantastic champion, and the creativity he displayed while defending the championship deserves its very own dedicated video. And again, if you've never seen Lesnar vs Guerrero, or if it's been a while since you've checked it out, you should really look it up again when you've got some free time. Vince McMahon wanted to show everyone how much of a badass Umaga was when Raw came to Milan, Italy on the 16th of April 2007. And so he invited anyone in the back to step into the ring and face Umaga for the Intercontinental Championship. No one wanted to come out and get a title shot, so McMahon extended the offer to people sitting in the audience. Vince offered a kid the opportunity to step in the ring with the Samoan bulldozer, but the little dude wasn't too eager. So some guy sitting in the front row was picked out by Vince, and this fan was named Santino Marella. Of course, Santino was a plant, but he played his role brilliantly. He looked like a fish out of water, and he had that giddy excitement that someone might have if they stepped in a WWE ring live on Raw. McMahon told Santino he couldn't sue the WWE if any harm came to him during this match. Santino agreed and said it was fine. And so when the match got underway, Vince announced that this IC title bout was going to be a no-holds-barred match. Umaga proceeded to beat Santino within an inch of his life, but Bobby Lashley came out to make the save. And seeing as Vince had made the match no-holds-barred, McMahon couldn't stop the bout as Lashley destroyed Umaga. Bobby pulled Santino over Umaga, the referee counted to 3, so this quote-unquote fan just became the new Intercontinental Champion in his home country of Italy. Santino would become a mainstay on WWE television. He was used as a comedy character who managed to get quite a lot of mileage out of his gimmick, but the night he won the IC title was quite shocking, and no one thought a fan sitting at ringside could actually overcome someone like Umaga. It's weird to say Chris Jericho was an underdog in 2001, but this is more about the guys he faced at Vengeance that year. This event featured a 3-match tournament that unified the WWF Championship and the World Championship. The World title was formerly the WCW Championship. In the first bracket, we had Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kurt Angle. In the second bracket, we had Chris Jericho and The Rock. And what you need to understand here is that practically no one expected Jericho to win this thing, including Jericho himself, as revealed in Chris's second book. As a matter of fact, Jericho didn't believe it until the pay-per-view had ended. What's more, Jericho defeated both The Rock and Steve Austin on the same night to become Undisputed Champion, and while this is a fact that Jericho wouldn't shut up about during his remaining days in the WWF, there's good reason for Jericho to constantly remind people of this achievement. Rock and Austin weren't pro wrestling superstars, they were absolute megastars that you wouldn't bet against during nights like this. Kurt Angle was no slouch either. He was a former WWF champion who was tearing it up during his matches, especially on pay-per-view. So Chris Jericho really was the odd one out here. He was great in the ring, he was great on the mic, he was definitely world champion material, but going up against Rock and Austin back to back, it felt like he didn't have a chance. To be fair, there were a lot of shenanigans going on here, and ultimately it was thanks to Booker T that Jericho won the tournament, but still quite the achievement here that only made Jericho look like a bigger star in the eyes of WWF fans. Kurt Angle revealed on his podcast that he was initially chosen to win the Undisputed Championship at Vengeance, but the plan was changed 1 week before the show took place. Loads left out here and loads more for you guys to talk about in the comments. Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10, Mickie James beating Beth Phoenix for the women's title, Benoit at Mania 20, Ron Simmons beating Vader for the WCW Championship, Gillberg becoming light heavyweight champion, Kofi Mania running wild at Mania 35. Discuss more moments in the comments, guys, and I'll look through them once this video goes live. Thank you very much for watching, and please take care.